In the baked outskirts of Millfield, a gavel dropped on a storage locker no one wanted. Sarah Matthews, 7 months pregnant and running out of options, stared at the rusted door of Unit 219 and the auctioneer's record book that now had her number beside it.
$20.
Her last reckless hope. The regulars laughed and drifted away. They knew dead inventory when they saw it. To them, the unit was a grave of swollen cardboard, ruined furniture, and memories nobody had cared enough to keep. Sarah needed it to be more. Behind the dusty threshold, beneath a tangle of shabby furniture, water-warped boxes and life's leftovers, her fingers would soon close around a small carved box and a packet of letters that would stop her heart. The past of a stranger, carefully saved and then forgotten, would reach into her present with answers to questions she hadn't dared ask. If the truth you've been missing all your life was buried in someone else's discarded memories, what would you do? The morning sun threw long bars of light across the storage lot as Sarah shifted her weight from one swollen ankle to the other. She pressed a hand into the small of her back, trying to ease the ache that had lived there for 7 months. Around her, 24 bidders milled and murmured. Most were regulars, men and women with clipboards, flashlights, and the practiced gaze that could read value through dust and cobwebs. "You sure you ought to be out here, honey?" A gray-haired woman with leathered skin eyed Sarah's belly. "These vultures don't play nice." Sarah forced a smile. "I need this," she said, mostly to herself. 3 months earlier she'd sat in her supervisor's office, listening to phrases like restructuring and last in, first out. The bookkeeping job she'd held for 5 years vanished in 30 minutes. The severance check lasted 6 weeks. Then came the certified notice from her landlord, the calls about medical bills, and finally Mark's text message. "I'm not ready for this. I'm sorry." Now all she had was $200 in cash, a maxed-out credit card, and a crumpled ad she'd circled in last night's paper. Storage unit auction. No minimum bid. "Next up, Unit 219. The auctioneer boomed. He was barrel-chested and didn't need a microphone. The metal door rattled upward, revealing a cluttered cave of forgotten possessions caught in the angled light. A wooden rocking chair, a crooked shaded lamp, sheet-draped furniture like slumped ghosts, boxes stacked without order. The serious buyers shifted forward, peering in, doing silent calculations. One by one they stepped back, unimpressed. "Worthless," someone muttered. "Nothing but junk." "Waste of time," another agreed. "Do I have $20? The auctioneer called, dropping to the rock-bottom opening bid. His gaze traveled the crowd. No paddles rose. Something tugged at Sarah. Desperation, maybe. Or an instinct she didn't trust. Her paddle went up before she had time to reconsider. "20 to the young lady," the auctioneer declared. "Do I hear 30? Silence. A few knowing chuckles drifted from the back. The regulars recognized a bad bet. Going once, going twice sold. Unit 219 to paddle 42. As the last word rang out, Sarah's stomach dropped. $20 she could not spare, spent on what every other person here had dismissed as garbage. The auctioneer came over, his expression softening as he handed her a key dangling from a plastic tag. "First-timer?" he asked, not unkindly. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "You've got 3 days to clear it out completely," he told her. "Anything left goes to the dump, and they'll charge you for it." "Thank you," she managed. "Good luck, sweetheart." He hesitated. "Sometimes these old units surprise you. My cousin once found a box of silver dollars under a stack of National Geographics. You never know." When the crowd moved on to the next door, Sarah stayed where she was. The baby turned inside her belly, a slow roll of movement that felt like a question mark. What now? How would she move all this? Where would she put it? How could she empty a whole unit before her due date when her doctor had already warned her about overdoing it? She stepped closer. The musty smell of shut-in years washed over her. Dust motes waltzed in the sunlight. That $20 bill had bought her a mountain of labor she wasn't supposed to do, inconvenient logistics, and a very slim chance that anything in there could help pay next month's rent. Her hand shook as she snapped a photo of the unit with her phone. She'd need to rent a truck. She'd need help with the heavy pieces. In her head, numbers started clicking: truck, gas, dump fees. This gamble might cost more than the bid. Yet as she slipped the key into her pocket, something besides fear stirred. For months her life had spun beyond her control. The lost job, the complications with the pregnancy, Mark's disappearance. This chaotic space at least was hers. To decide what stayed, what sold, what was worth saving. "We'll make this work," she whispered to the baby. One box at a time. The rental truck coughed to a stop in front of Unit 219 that afternoon. Sarah had paid extra for the smallest one she could get. Her bank account groaned, but her back thanked her. Her elderly neighbor had insisted on coming. Mr. Jenkins, in his 70s with a careful gait and a stubborn streak, pulled on work gloves as he checked his watch. "I've got about 2 hours before my doctor's appointment," he said. "Let's make 'em count." Sarah unlocked the warm padlock. The door rolled up again, exposing the full depth of what she'd bought. The unit was longer than it had looked from outside, with narrow paths pressed between leaning columns of boxes and furniture. "Good Lord," Mr. Jenkins breathed. "Somebody liked their stuff." "We need a system," Sarah said, more to calm herself than him. "Furniture first, then boxes. 3 piles. Sell, donate, trash." They started with what blocked the entrance. A water-swollen bookcase split and went straight to trash. A wobbling end table might be salvageable with some glue. Beneath a dust-grayed sheet, Sarah uncovered the rocking chair she'd glimpsed during the auction. "This looks promising," Mr. Jenkins said, wiping it down with his handkerchief. Under his touch the wood glowed warm and rich. Solid oak. Hand-carved. Not factory. Sarah traced the curved armrest, feeling the smoothness through the grime. "Is it worth anything?" "I'm no expert," he said, rocking it gently. The runners glided without a creak. "But my daughter paid $300 for one not half this nice at an antique shop." $300. Sarah's pulse picked up. That would cover next week's rent and a modest grocery run. As they worked, an outline of the former owner took shape. The furniture spanned decades but shared solidity and care. The boxes were mostly women's things. Skirts from the 1980s, floral housewares, paperbacks with tidy notes in the margins. "I think this was all one person's," Sarah said, opening a box of empty picture frames. "A woman living alone." By the time Mr. Jenkins had to leave, the truck held the rocking chair and several promising pieces. He made her promise to call if she found anything too heavy. All afternoon Sarah sorted steadily. Most boxes held everyday items, kitchen tools, dated clothes, mass-market novels collapsed at the spine. Gradually she formed a 4th pile. Personal items that felt too intimate to sell yet useless for donation. Around 4, she opened a box of linens and found, beneath embroidered pillowcases and yellowed doilies, a hand-stitched quilt. Its colors were still surprisingly bright. She spread it out on the concrete, admiring the intricate pattern. "Someone loved you," she murmured, following the tiny stitches with a fingertip. Her phone buzzed. A reminder for tomorrow's prenatal appointment. The baby had been quiet all afternoon, as though understanding that today required focus. She laid a protective hand on her belly. "What do you think, little one? Should we keep the quilt for you?" A flutter answered from inside. Sarah smiled, her first unforced smile in weeks. She folded the quilt carefully and started a small keep pile she hadn't meant to have. By dusk she'd barely eaten into the unit, but the truck held a handful of solid finds. The rocking chair alone might justify her impulsive bid. At home her cramped apartment quickly filled. She eased the rocking chair into a corner near the window, draped the quilt over one arm, and lowered herself gingerly into the seat. It fit her perfectly, supporting the places that hurt most. From this new perch she opened her laptop and searched for antique rockers that resembled hers. Listing after listing made her blink. Prices as high as $400–500. For the first time since the faint pink line had appeared on the pregnancy test, something like control crept back into her chest. One good sale. One small win to build on. The baby kicked, firm and approving. A stack of envelopes waited on her kitchen counter the next morning. Electric, water, phone, the hospital's payment plan for her last ultrasound. On top lay another certified letter from the landlord. Final notice before eviction. The doorbell rang. Sarah's stomach clenched. She knew it would be Mr. Patel. He stood in the hallway with that familiar mix of sympathy and landlordly resolve. "Ms. Matthews," he began, eyes flicking to her belly and back. "I've been very patient." "I know," Sarah cut in. "And I'm grateful. I just need a little more time. The owner is pressuring me. Corporate policy. I have a plan," she said. "I've acquired some antiques. I'm listing them online now. The rocking chair alone should cover what I owe for last month." Mr. Patel craned his neck to see around her. The apartment was crowded with displaced furniture. "You have 1 week," he said at last. "After that, I have no flexibility left." When he left, Sarah dropped into the rocking chair, her thinking spot now. She checked her online listing for the 10th time. Several inquiries, no firm offers. That afternoon at the clinic, Dr. Wilson frowned at her blood pressure. "It's elevated again," the doctor said, tightening the cuff for a second reading. "Your ankles are quite swollen." "I've been on my feet a lot," Sarah admitted. "Sorting a storage unit." "The baby's heartbeat is strong," Dr. Wilson said, listening carefully. "But these symptoms concern me. If they don't improve, we'll have to talk about limited bed rest." Sarah's blood ran cold. "I can't. I need to clear that unit and sell what I can." "Your health and your baby's health come first," Dr. Wilson said gently. She handed over a brochure. "These are the warning signs of preeclampsia. If you have any of them, you go straight to the hospital. No hesitation." On her way home, Sarah's phone chimed. A notification from the Marketplace app. Rocking chair sold. $325. Pickup requested tomorrow. Relief surged sharp and bright. Then sober math kicked in. $325 would clean last month's overdue rent. But not this month. Not the utilities. Not the medical bills. On impulse, she swung by the storage facility. 2 days left to clear the unit or pay another month she couldn't afford. Most of the large pieces were gone now. The back wall still loomed with dozens of boxes. She opened one, lining its contents on the floor to photograph. Vintage Pyrex bowls, a well-seasoned cast iron skillet. Small things worth little alone, but maybe something together. Her phone rang. An antique dealer responded to her email about the furniture. "I'm particularly interested in the mahogany side table and the secretary desk you described," the man said. "I could drop by tomorrow afternoon." Another notch in the win column. She added him to tomorrow's schedule, just after the chair pickup. That night she spread her bills across the kitchen table. If the dealer bought everything she'd earmarked, if the online sales moved fast, if nothing unexpected happened, she might scrape together enough to avert disaster. Barely. The baby was due in less than 8 weeks. With her blood pressure, Dr. Wilson had warned the child might come earlier. As if in answer, a sharp kick pressed under Sarah's ribs. "I know," she told the unseen little person. "I'm trying." She ran a hand along the rocking chair's arm one last time. $325 down, she whispered. "Only $2,700 to go." Morning light slanted into Unit 219, highlighting swirls of dust as Sarah maneuvered another box aside. Her back ached constantly now. Her feet had stopped bothering to complain. The rocking chair sale and yesterday's visit from the antique dealer, Mr. Harmon, had buoyed her. He'd bought several pieces for more than she dared hope. 2 more days, she murmured. Just finish the boxes. With the big furniture gone, emptiness showed through in broad gray rectangles of concrete. The remaining stacks were the sediment of a life. Picture frames, kitchen gadgets, knickknacks from other decades. Her sell, donate, keep, and trash piles grew and shifted. Near noon she turned her attention to a neglected corner, partially hidden by a metal shelving unit. When she dragged the shelf aside, she spotted a narrow gap behind the front row of boxes, just wide enough for another row pressed against the back wall. "How did I miss you?" she muttered, squeezing through. Here the boxes were different. Plastic tubs with snap lids instead of sagging cardboard. She slid one out. It was lighter than she expected. Inside lay another quilt, perfectly folded, its colors vivid as if they'd never seen daylight. Unlike the earlier quilt, this one looked unused. As she lifted it, something hard shifted within the folds. Wrapped inside was a wooden box about the size of a loaf of bread, dark with age and polished by touch. Delicate carvings of vines and flowers twined over its surface. A small brass latch, green with tarnish, kept it closed. Sarah's fingers hovered over the clasp. Until now she'd avoided digging into clearly personal things. This was different, protected, hidden, clearly cherished. It's just something else to sell, she told herself. The lie fell flat. The latch opened with a soft click. Inside, faded red velvet cradled a careful arrangement. A stack of yellowed envelopes bound with blue ribbon, several black and white photographs, a small silver bracelet. Sarah picked up the top photograph. A young woman stood beside a flowering tree, one hand lifted to shield her eyes. Her dress and hairstyle suggested the early 1970s. Something in her face, the set of the eyes, the tilt of her smile, hit Sarah with a jolt of familiarity she couldn't place. On the back, in blue ink, Elizabeth, spring 1972. The next showed the same woman seated on a porch swing with a young man. They leaned into each other, laughing at something off camera. Elizabeth and David, 4th of July. The back read. Gently, Sarah untied the ribbon around the letters. The envelopes were addressed in looping script. My dearest Elizabeth. The return address listed a Margaret in Cincinnati. She hesitated. These were someone's private words. But that strange pull she felt toward the girl in the photos wouldn't let her close the box. The silver bracelet rested in the velvet. Child-sized. On the underside, in graceful script, one word. Elizabeth. Sarah sat back on her heels, the open box balanced in her lap. Unlike everything else in the unit, this wasn't random clutter. This was a heart's archive, lovingly hidden. The baby kicked, sharp and sudden, startling her. She pressed a hand to her belly. What am I supposed to do with this? She asked the empty unit. She closed the box, rewrapped it in the quilt and set it aside, separate from all her other piles. First, she needed to understand why that familiar face had shaken something loose inside her. Rain threaded down the window that night, turning Sarah's apartment into a small, quiet island. The wooden box sat on her coffee table, its carvings catching the lamplight. She'd spent the day ripping through more boxes at the unit, but her thoughts kept circling back to the hidden tub, the velvet lining, the photographs. Now, with the apartment still, she laid everything out on the table. Photos, letters, bracelet. She opened the first envelope, dated September 1972. My dearest Elizabeth, I hope you are adjusting to your new surroundings. Your father still refuses to speak your name, but I think of you every day. Letter by letter, a story emerged. Margaret, likely Elizabeth's mother, wrote about family news threaded through careful references to your situation and difficult choices. Hints of estrangement and secrets. Midway through the stack, Sarah unfolded a thicker document. An official birth certificate, embossed with Ohio's state seal. Elizabeth and Collins, born April 17, 1953. Her eyes snagged on the hospital name. Riverside Methodist, Columbus. The same hospital where she'd been born, 27 years later. Coincidence, she told herself. Riverside was one of the largest maternity centers in the region. Her own adoption story had always been simple and vague. Her parents had never hidden it, but they hadn't volunteered details either. It had been a private adoption, they said. Her birth mother was young and couldn't care for you, but wanted you to have a good life. She'd never felt an urgent need to go digging. Her childhood had been stable and full of love. But sitting here, holding a stranger's birth certificate from her own birthplace, unease crept in. She scrolled to Mom in her contacts. Janet answered on the second ring. Sarah? Is everything okay? Is it the baby? We're fine, Sarah said. I just have a question. Did you ever know my birth mother's name? A pause stretched. Why are you asking about this now? Janet said carefully. Sarah looked at the photograph of Elizabeth by the blooming tree. How could she begin to explain this strange connection? I found some things that belong to a woman named Elizabeth Collins, she said. It made me curious. Elizabeth, her mother repeated, testing the sound. No, that doesn't ring a bell. The agency only gave us an initial, not Elizabeth. Disappointment and relief wrestled in Sarah's chest. But, Janet continued slowly, I do remember your Aunt Catherine once mentioning some relative named Elizabeth. Some old family scandal. Before you were born. Aunt Catherine. Sarah hadn't spoken to her father's sister in years. Not since their ugly fight over the inheritance after her dad's death. She and your father had a falling out, Janet said. But she might remember more than I do, if you think there's a connection. After they hung up, Sarah stared again at Elizabeth's photo. Had there ever been mentions of an Elizabeth at family gatherings? She couldn't recall any. She found Catherine's number at the bottom of her contacts list. They hadn't spoken since the funeral 3 years ago. Her aunt answered on the 4th ring, sounding tired. Sarah. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Sarah said. I'm trying to find information about someone named Elizabeth Collins. Mom thought you might know something. The silence that followed was so abrupt Sarah checked to be sure the call hadn't dropped. Then Catherine spoke, her voice brittle. Where did you hear that name? I found some of her things. Letters. A birth certificate. I don't know why you're digging up ancient history. Catherine cut in, words clipped. Elizabeth has nothing to do with you. So you did know her, Sarah said softly. This conversation is over, Catherine snapped. Don't call me again about this nonsense. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, stunned. Her aunt's response hadn't been indifference. It had been raw, as if an old wound had been poked. The baby gave a sharp jab that made Sarah wince. She covered the spot with her palm. Something's off, she whispered to the tiny foot or elbow beneath her skin. Why would she react like that? She looked back at Elizabeth's birth certificate, running a finger over the hospital name. Same city. Same hospital. The eerie familiarity of Elizabeth's face. Catherine's reaction. These weren't just coincidences. They felt like threads. Mr. Harmon arrived at the storage facility exactly at 3 the next afternoon, his vintage Mercedes sliding into a space with a soft purr. He was older than his voice had suggested, mid-70s, silver hair, tweed jacket despite the heat, half-moon glasses perched on his nose. Miss Matthews. He extended a hand, his grip dry and firm. William Harmon. A pleasure. Sarah had spent the morning arranging the pieces he'd expressed interest in. The secretary desk, nesting tables, 2 Victorian side chairs. Thank you for coming, she said, leading him into the unit. They're all over here. He moved with the unhurried precision of someone used to discovering value tucked where others missed it. He ran his fingers along the secretary's grain, open drawers, checked joints and brass fittings with a small magnifying glass from his pocket. Good craftsmanship, he murmured. American 1880s. Original hardware. He repeated this slow ritual with each piece, sometimes jotting in a leather notebook. Sarah watched, fascinated by the reverent way he handled the furniture. You have a good eye, he said finally, snapping the notebook closed. These are quality items. Not museum pieces but quite collectible. Could you make an offer? Sarah asked, fighting to keep her voice even. He named a figure. It landed several $100s higher than she dared hope. I can pay cash today, he added, and arrange pickup tomorrow. That would be perfect, she said, relief flooding her. This sale, with the rocking chair and the small items, would finally pull her and the baby back from the edge. As he wrote out a receipt, his attention drifted toward the remaining boxes. Anything else of interest? Smaller pieces can be surprisingly valuable. Sarah thought of the wooden box on her coffee table. There is something, she said slowly. I took it home. I wanted a closer look. She described the carved box, the letters, the bracelet. Mr. Harmon's face sharpened with interest. Sounds like Victorian work, he said. The box alone may hold value, depending on the carving and wood. There's also a locket, Sarah remembered suddenly, in a little compartment under the letters. His eyebrows rose. Jewelry from that era can be quite collectible. Gold? Silver? Gemstones. I couldn't get it open, Sarah admitted. No visible hinge. Many Victorian lockets have hidden catches, he said. If you're comfortable, I'd be happy to examine it. An hour later they sat at Sarah's scarred kitchen table, the wooden box open between them. Mr. Harmon wore thin white cotton gloves he'd pulled from his briefcase. Oils from the skin can be unkind to old paper, he explained. He lifted letters and photographs without reading, noting their excellent condition. Someone preserved these with great care, he said. They mattered. He picked up the locket, an oval pendant on a delicate chain, its surface etched with flowers. Turning it under the lamp, He felt along an almost invisible seam. "Ah," he murmured. With a delicate press, the locket snapped open. Inside, 2 tiny photographs sat behind oval panes of glass. On one side, the same young woman, Elizabeth. On the other, an infant in a hospital cap. Mid-1970s, I'd say, he said. The locket itself looks older, likely an heirloom. Is it worth much? Sarah asked. To the right buyer, a few hundred perhaps, he said, closing it carefully. But I suspect its real worth is tied to the story in this box. Sarah nodded, unexpectedly relieved he wasn't pushing to buy it. Miss Matthews, Mr. Harmon said, removing his glasses to polish them. In 50 years I've seen many personal effects boxed and sold after death. But this, he gestured. This was deliberately preserved. Paid for in storage for decades. It clearly meant the world to someone. I know, Sarah said. I keep wondering if I should try to find her. Or her family. Quite possibly, he said. And I might help. I've developed a knack for tracing provenance. Feel like I could make some inquiries. Professional curiosity. Sarah weighed the offer. From the instant she'd found the box, she'd felt tethered to it. Catherine's reaction had only deepened that feeling. I'd appreciate that, she said. There's something about this Elizabeth that feels connected. The objects we keep close tell our truest stories, Mr. Harmon said, putting his glasses back on. Perhaps this one has found you for a reason. The waiting room at Dr. Wilson's was unusually crowded at her next appointment. Sarah shifted in her chair, checking her watch. 20 minutes past her scheduled time. The dull headache she'd woken with throbbed behind her eyes. She closed them and practiced the breathing exercises from her childbirth class. The last few days had been frantic, emptying the unit, hauling what she kept to Mr. Harmon's temporary storage, depositing his cash. She'd managed to catch up on rent and patch the worst of her medical arrears, buying herself a little time. Sarah Matthews, the nurse called. In the exam room the cuff squeezed her arm. The nurse frowned at the reading, waited, and did it again. I'll note this for Dr. Wilson, she said. When the doctor came in, her usual easy smile was missing. Your blood pressure is significantly elevated, she said. Any headaches, dizziness, swelling beyond your ankles? Headache, Sarah admitted. And my hands feel puffy. After a careful exam, Dr. Wilson sat face grave. I'm worried, she said. Your pressure is 152/98. With the headache and swelling, we have to take preeclampsia seriously. What does that mean? Sarah's voice came out thin. It's a pregnancy complication that can be dangerous if untreated, Dr. Wilson said. I'm prescribing partial bed rest for a week. Bathroom and simple meals only. Otherwise you lie down. Preferably on your left side. Bed rest. Panic climbed her throat. I still have so much to do. I need to finish. This isn't optional, Sarah. Dr. Wilson's tone gentled but stayed firm. Your body is sounding an alarm. If the numbers don't improve, we may have to deliver the baby early. The prescription paper felt heavy as she left the office. Bed rest. When the storage unit wasn't entirely sorted. When money was still precarious. When the mystery of Elizabeth Collins gnawed at her. Back at the apartment she changed into soft clothes and eased onto the bed, propping herself with pillows. The wooden box waited on her nightstand. If she was trapped here, she might as well make use of the time. She organized the letters by date and began at the earliest. At first, Margaret's words focused on the undisclosed facility, where Elizabeth was staying, then on nursing school plans and first apartments. One letter from August 1973 made Sarah stop and reread. I know leaving Ohio was difficult, but a fresh start may be what you need. Your father still refuses to discuss what happened, but I've enclosed the baby's hospital bracelet as you requested. I know giving her up was the hardest decision you ever made, my darling, but you must believe it was for the best. Elizabeth had surrendered a baby. The timing matched the infant photo in the locket. Was this why the box had been protected above all else? A shrine to a child given away? The birth certificate said Elizabeth was born in 1953. She would have been about 20 in 1973, young, but not exceptionally so. Yet the letters painted a scandal so large it shattered the family. The baby in Sarah's belly rolled, pressing hard. She rubbed the taut skin, imagining a newborn being carried away before her mother even held her. What could force that? Her phone rang. Mr. Harmon. I've done some preliminary digging, he said. Elizabeth Collins graduated from Riverside's nursing school in 1975. Worked at various Midwestern hospitals, then settled at Mercy General in Springfield about 15 years ago. You found her. Sarah pushed herself a little more upright, head pounding. I found her career, he corrected. Whether she's still there I don't know. Records are dated. That's still incredible, she said. Thank you. Are you all right, my dear? You sound strained. Sarah summarized the bed rest order and Dr. Wilson's concerns. Then we adapt, Mr. Harmon said briskly. You rest. I'll keep looking. When you're better, we can lay these letters out in order to see the full picture. After they hung up, Sarah grabbed her laptop. She knew she shouldn't, but she typed anyway. Elizabeth Collins, Nurse, Springfield. Nothing relevant.
No obituaries, no LinkedIn profiles, no social media.
She tried combinations Elizabeth A. Collins, Beth Collins RN, but got nowhere. The headache pulsed. She snapped the laptop shut and sank back among the pillows. The mystery of Elizabeth would have to wait. For now, the baby's health depended on her doing nothing. She spread both hands over her stomach, feeling subtle movements beneath. We'll figure this out, she whispered. Just not today. 3 days of enforced rest dulled the headache and shrunk her ankles back to something closer to normal. Restless but obedient, Sarah rearranged her bedroom into a tiny control center. Laptop, phone, notepad, the wooden box within reach. That afternoon she made one short trip to the hall closet for the fireproof lockbox holding her important papers. She carried it like treasure back to bed. Inside were her parents' birth and death certificates, their marriage license, and a sealed envelope labeled adoption records. She'd never opened it. Her parents had always answered questions when asked and never pushed more. She'd never pushed either. Until now. With careful fingers she broke the seal and unfolded the documents. The first was her original birth certificate, listing her birth date, January 12, 1980, and naming her only as baby girl, the surname blacked out. For mother, it listed only an initial and a last name, E.C. Her heart hammered. E.C. Elizabeth Collins. She flipped through the rest. Most pages were vague, designed to protect identities. One form included basic information. The birth mother was 27, a registered nurse, in good health with no reported genetic disorders. Elizabeth had been born in 1953, 27 in 1980. The dates lined up exactly. Hands shaking, Sarah dialed her aunt again. Catherine answered warily. I thought I told. I have reason to believe Elizabeth Collins might be my birth mother, Sarah said, cutting her off, voice steady. I've seen the paperwork. My original birth certificate lists my birth mother was 27 and a nurse. That matches Elizabeth. Silence. Then a long exhale like a balloon finally losing air. How did you find out about her? Catherine asked, defeated. I bought a storage unit at auction. It had her things. Letters from your mother, photos, personal papers. Sarah swallowed. Was she your sister? Yes, Catherine said. The word sounded dragged out of her. My older sister. The family disgrace, according to our father. Because she got pregnant? Sarah asked. That was part of it, Catherine said. It was 1972. Elizabeth was in college. Dating a boy our parents disapproved of. David something. When she got pregnant, father lost his mind. Sent her to a home for unwed mothers. She was supposed to give the baby up and come home like nothing happened. But she didn't? Sarah asked. She did, Catherine said quietly. She gave the baby up. Came home. Started nursing school. But she was never the same. Always asking questions about the baby, if it was a boy or girl, whether it had gone to a loving home. Father shut her down. Told her not to bring it up again. What happened to that baby? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Adopted immediately, Catherine said. Closed adoption. That was normal then. Elizabeth never knew where the child went. And then? She left, Catherine said. After nursing school. She couldn't stand father's rules. Mother kept in touch secretly. Those letters you found were probably hers. I only saw Elizabeth a few times, at Mother's funeral, then when Father was dying. The baby she had in 1973, Sarah said. That wasn't me. No, Catherine's tone softened. You were born in 1980. By then Elizabeth had her life straightened out. She was working as a nurse, had her own apartment. I remember she visited for Christmas in '79. She seemed different, distracted. Then she left suddenly, a few days before New Year's without explanation. Pieces snapped into alignment. Christmas 1979. Elizabeth's abrupt departure. Sarah's birth weeks later, January 1980. Did she ever mention being pregnant again? Sarah asked. Giving up another baby? Not to me, Catherine said. We weren't close by then. After Mother died, the family just split. My adoption records say my birth mother's initials are EC, Sarah said. It fits. I suppose it does, Catherine said slowly. It would also explain why Elizabeth was so interested when Janet and Robert brought you home. She asked so many questions Janet got suspicious. She knew my parents? Sarah's breath caught. She saw me. Once, Catherine said. When you were about 6 months old. She brought you a ridiculously expensive silver rattle. After that visit she moved farther away. I lost track. Do you know where she is now? Sarah asked. Is she alive? I have no idea, Catherine admitted. It's been at least a decade since I heard anything. Do you really think she might be your birth mother? The evidence points to it, Sarah said. Her hand drifted to her stomach, feeling the baby's slow turns. I need to know. If anyone deserves answers, it's you, Catherine said quietly. Elizabeth's old boyfriend. I've remembered his full name. David Mitchell. He might know something. They were serious before Father interfered. Thank you, Sarah said. That helps. And if I find her, Catherine's voice went soft. Tell her I'm sorry. For all of it. After the call, Sarah returned to the bed and emptied the wooden box out again, more carefully than before. She'd read these letters half a dozen times in the last few days. Surely there was more hidden somewhere. We're close, she told the baby, who answered with a lazy shift. I can feel it. She examined the box itself. Dovetailed corners, curling vines, careful carving. Inside, along one side of the velvet, she noticed a faint line where the wood's color shifted. She pressed. The bottom gave slightly and slid aside, revealing a narrow compartment beneath. Clever, she whispered. Inside lay a small leather address book, its cover worn. Names, addresses, and phone numbers filled the pages, many crossed out and updated. The handwriting matched Elizabeth's signature. Cramped, steady, practical. On page 15 Sarah spotted it. David Mitchell with a star drawn beside it. An address in Columbus, the phone number rewritten several times, the last change dated 3 years ago. She lifted her phone then paused. What would she say? Hello, I'm the daughter you never knew existed, and you may be my grandfather? She set the phone down, swallowing. On the next page a name bore both a star and a heart. Ruth Anderson. Springfield address. Fewer edits to the contact details, as if Ruth had stayed put while Elizabeth had moved. Ruth. The name tugged at Sarah's memory from one of Margaret's letters, a nursing school friend. This time she didn't hesitate. She dialed. Hello. A woman's voice, older but clear. Is this Ruth Anderson? Sarah asked. Yes. Who's speaking? My name is Sarah Matthews, she said. We've never met. I'm trying to locate someone you might know, Elizabeth Collins. A sharp inhale. Elizabeth? Good heavens. I haven't heard that name aloud in 5 years at least. How do you know Lizzie? The nickname made Sarah's throat tighten. I think she might be related to me, she said carefully. I bought a storage unit that held some of her belongings. A storage unit, Ruth said with a sad little chuckle. Sounds like her. Always keeping everything. Her tone sharpened. Is she all right? Why are you calling me and not her? I don't know where she is, Sarah admitted. I was hoping you might. This is very odd, Ruth said slowly. What did you say your name was? Sarah Matthews, she repeated. Then, taking a breath. I have reason to believe Elizabeth Collins is my birth mother. I was born in January 1980 and adopted at birth. Silence thickened over the line. Oh my, Ruth whispered at last. Oh my goodness. You're the baby. You know about me? Sarah asked, her heart leaping. Lizzie told me everything, Ruth said, voice trembling. We met as roommates in nursing school and stayed friends ever since. She never stopped thinking about you. Her second baby. The one she had to give up. So it's true, Sarah said, her throat tight. She is my birth mother. She never knew your name, Ruth said. Wasn't allowed. Closed adoption. But the dates match exactly. Ruth paused. This is not a conversation for a phone line, she said gently. Would you meet me? I have photos. Letters she wrote for someday. Yes, Sarah said immediately. I'm on bed rest right now, but I have a checkup in 2 days. If my doctor approves, I could meet then. You're pregnant. Ruth's voice held a note of wonder. Then Elizabeth is a grandmother. Her tone sobered. That is, if we can find her in time. They agreed on a quiet cafe near Dr. Wilson's office and exchanged descriptions so they'd recognize each other. When Sarah ended the call, she sat very still. It was real now. Not just documents and guesses. Elizabeth Collins was her mother, and Ruth, this woman she'd never met, held the story Sarah had been missing her whole life. The baby kicked a firm thump. We're going to find her, Sarah whispered to the life inside and the woman far away. We're going to close the circle. The cafe was nearly empty at 3 o'clock 2 days later, as Ruth had predicted. Dr. Wilson had been cautiously pleased with Sarah's improved numbers, extending bed rest but granting a single exception for this meeting. Some things are medicine for the soul, she'd said when Sarah explained. Sarah picked a corner table with a clear view of the door. She'd barely settled when the bell chimed and a small white-haired woman stepped in, scanning the room. Ruth Anderson moved with purpose despite her age, her back straight, gaze sharp behind tortoiseshell glasses. A worn leather handbag hung from one shoulder, a large manila envelope tucked under her arm. Sarah raised a hand. Ruth's face lit and she crossed the room. Sarah, she said warmly, taking the chair across from her. I'd have known you anywhere. You have her eyes. The words hit something deep. No one had ever told Sarah she resembled anyone. Ruth reached into her bag and lifted out a faded blue photo album. I brought these, she said. Lizzie and I have nearly 50 years of history. She opened to the first page. 2 young women in starched white uniforms stood arm in arm, nursing caps perfectly placed, faces bright with possibility. That was our first day of clinical rotations, Ruth said. 1974. She was the best in our class, you know. The rest of us wanted husbands. She wanted to help people. I think losing her first baby changed her that way. Her first, Sarah said softly. In 1973? Ruth nodded, turning pages. She told me everything. How her father sent her away in shame. How she wasn't allowed to hold her daughter. How they took the baby immediately. She named her Hannah in her heart, Ruth added. But only there. She was never allowed to choose an official name. Ruth flipped to later photos. Elizabeth in scrubs at a nurse's station. At holiday parties. In a tiny apartment's kitchen. In each picture Sarah saw a cautiousness behind the smile, as if part of her had never fully returned home. What happened in 1979? Sarah asked. My aunt mentioned she visited at Christmas and left abruptly. Ruth's expression clouded. That was complicated. She'd been seeing a doctor at work. Richard. When she found out she was pregnant again, he made it clear he wasn't interested in being a father. Ruth's voice softened. This time she was determined not to repeat the past. She was older, financially stable. She said, if I've helped so many mothers, I can surely be one myself. She planned to keep the baby. But she didn't, Sarah said. No, Ruth agreed. When she went home for Christmas and told her father, he exploded. Threatened to cut off Catherine's college funds if Elizabeth brought scandal again. Catherine was barely an adult, depended on him completely. So she sacrificed me to protect her sister, Sarah said, feeling the ache of it in a way that was somehow less accusation and more sorrow. She made the hardest choice she ever made twice, Ruth said gently. She never forgave herself for either. She reached into the manila envelope and drew out a folded letter, the paper tissue thin. She wrote this to you the day you were born, Ruth said. She gave it to me for safekeeping. She didn't expect you'd ever read it, but she needed to write it. Did she ever try to find me? Sarah asked. When laws began to change, yes, Ruth said. She hired a private investigator. But the agency had closed. Records were lost or sealed. All she learned was that you'd gone to a couple named Matthews. She knew my adoptive parents' name? Sarah whispered. Your mother did something very brave for a closed adoption, Ruth said. She sent a photo of you at 6 months, with only Matthews written on the back. Elizabeth treasured it. Ruth turned to the album's final page. There was Sarah as a baby, the same photo that had graced Janet and Robert's mantle for years. Did she ever find happiness? Sarah asked, tracing the outline of the infant in the picture. She built a meaningful life, Ruth said. She became a brilliant nurse, specializing in neonatal care. She never married, never had other children, but she poured herself into the babies she cared for. Ruth's face darkened. 3 years ago, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Initially, it responded to treatment. Then it spread. Sarah swallowed. Where is she now? The last I knew, she'd enrolled in a clinical trial at Brighton Medical Center in Cleveland, Ruth said. We exchanged Christmas cards last year. The return address was for a temporary apartment near the hospital. Since then, nothing. I have to find her, Sarah said. Before the baby comes. Ruth studied her face, then smiled softly. I think it would heal something in both of you. But prepare yourself. Metastatic cancer is unpredictable. Sarah nodded, resting one palm over the letter and the other over her belly. 2 generations linked by a woman neither had truly known, yet whose choices had shaped them. The modest 2-story house in Springfield that Ruth had written on a scrap of paper did not match how Sarah had pictured Elizabeth's life. She'd imagined a neat townhouse, tidy window boxes, everything in order. Instead, a young mother with a toddler opened the door. We've been here about a year and a half, the woman said when Sarah asked about Elizabeth. Previous owner was an older nurse, I think. Moved away for health reasons. That's all our realtor said. Did you get any of her mail? Sarah asked. Maybe a forwarding address? The woman shook her head. Sorry. Back in the car, Sarah sat for a long moment, the limited window of her day off from bed rest ticking away. She unfolded Elizabeth's nursing license, which she'd found folded in the address book. Mercy General Hospital in Springfield had been her last known employer. At the HR desk, a receptionist recited policy. We can't release employee information to non-family members. I believe I am family, Sarah said quietly. I'm her daughter. Adopted at birth. I'm pregnant and need to know about possible genetic risks. The woman's expression softened. Wait here, she said. After 20 minutes, Sarah was invited into a small office with a plaque that read, Diane Levinson, Human Resources. I appreciate your situation, Diane said. I hope you appreciate mine. We have to protect privacy. I'm not asking for medical details, Sarah said. Just when she left. Whether she's still in the area. Diane tapped at her keyboard. I can confirm that Elizabeth Collins worked here as a registered nurse until 3 years ago, she said. She took medical leave, then resigned. She hesitated and then added carefully, I'm afraid that's all I can tell you officially. The word hung there. Thank you, Sarah said, standing. As she reached the door, Diane said quietly, 3rd floor nurses station. Maternity. Judy Chen's been head nurse there for 15 years. The maternity floor hummed with the sounds of beeping monitors and soft voices. 3 nurses juggled charts and calls at the station. Sarah waited until one stepped away from the others. Her badge read Judy Chen RN. Excuse me, Sarah said. I'm looking for information about Elizabeth Collins. I was told you might know her. Judy studied her belly, her drawn but hopeful face. Were you a patient? She asked. No, Sarah said. I'm her daughter. Judy's brows shot up. Elizabeth never mentioned children. It's complicated, Sarah said. I was adopted at birth. I've only just learned who my birth mother is. Judy's expression softened. She was one of the best nurses we had, she said. especially with preemies. Families still send Christmas cards. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. When she got sick, it hit us hard. She stayed strong as long as she could. Kept working until treatment got too rough. Do you know where she went after? Sarah asked. To Cleveland, Judy said. Specialized trial at Brighton Medical. She emailed for a while, said things were going okay. Then last winter my message bounced back. Do you think she's? Sarah couldn't finish. I don't know, Judy said honestly. She didn't like people worrying. She pulled out a notepad and scribbled a name and number. This is her oncologist, Dr. Simmons. She gave it to me in case any of her former patients' kids needed family history. I can't promise he'll talk to you, but it's worth trying. Sarah took the note. Did she ever talk about her past? Sarah asked. About having a baby? Not directly, Judy said. But when we had young mothers placing babies for adoption, she just understood them. In a way the rest of us couldn't. She paused. She kept a photo in her locker, Judy added. A 6-month-old baby. I always assumed it was a patient. Now I wonder. It might have been me, Sarah said softly. I've learned my adoptive mother sent her a picture. Judy looked at her closely. You really do have her eyes, she said. I didn't see it at first. But now. She rummaged in a drawer and pulled out an old nursing textbook. She donated some things to our charity auction before she left, Judy said. No one bought this. Kept it. She wrote all over the margins. I've been meaning to mail it to her. Maybe you should have it now. Sarah opened it. Precise notes filled the edges, the same handwriting as in the address book. A tangible piece of the woman she was chasing. I'm going to keep looking, Sarah said, more vow than statement. If I find her, I'll tell her you said hello. And to check her email. Judy's smile held tears. Do that, she said. Some of us still worry. It took 3 days of leaving messages with Dr. Simmons's office before his assistant finally called back. Doctor-patient confidentiality means he can't discuss Ms. Collins's case, the assistant said. But he asked me to pass on a suggestion. Sarah clutched the phone. Go on. He says Elizabeth kept everything important, the assistant said. You may find what you need among her belongings. It was cryptic, but it was something. Sarah went back to the wooden box and the nursing textbook. Page after page of the textbook contained clinical notes and occasional personal observations. Remember Mrs. Jenkins, similar symptoms. Check family history. Ask Dr. Martin Ree. Alternative protocol. Near the back something slipped free and fell to the bed. A slim leather journal. Unlike the textbook, this was obviously private. A medical diary of Elizabeth's illness. Sarah hesitated. But if Elizabeth had tucked it into a book she'd left at the hospital, maybe she'd meant for it to be found someday. She opened to the first entry 3 years earlier. Diagnosis confirmed today. Stage 2B. Dr. Simmons recommends aggressive approach. Surgery Tuesday. Future pages recorded chemocycles, lab results, side effects. The tone was clinical with flashes of raw fear. Hair falling out in clumps. Vain to care, but I hardly recognized myself. Then first clean scan. Cautiously hopeful. Thinking more about the daughter I never knew. BRCA1 positive, does she have a right to know? Later entries turned grim. Cancer back. Liver metastasis. Standard treatments tapped out. Enrolling in clinical trial at Brighton. On the final pages, Elizabeth wrote about experimental drugs, fatigue, and attempts to access adoption records. Another dead end. Agency records destroyed in flood. Should I give up? Time may be short. The last entry, dated 7 months earlier, made Sarah's chest ache. Tumors not responding as hoped. Trial moving to phase 2. Putting affairs in order. Paid storage unit another year. Maybe someday she'll find it. Find me. Left letter with Ruth just in case. Some things must be said even if never heard. Sarah closed the journal, eyes burning. Elizabeth had been searching too. Through illness and setbacks, hoping their paths would cross. Based on that final date, she'd been alive 7 months ago. Very sick but alive. Sarah reached for her phone and called Dr. Wilson's office. I need information on genetic testing for BRCA mutations, she told the nurse. My birth mother had metastatic breast cancer. The next morning she sat in Dr. Wilson's office again, explaining everything she'd learned. This is significant family history, Dr. Wilson said. We'll order testing today. The results will matter for you and your child. How long? Sarah asked. About 2 weeks for full results, Dr. Wilson said. Meanwhile, with your blood pressure and the new information, we should revisit your birth plan. As Sarah left with lab paperwork, urgency settled over her. Elizabeth had spent years searching. Now Sarah was the one racing time. The journal suggested she was still somewhere at Brighton, though her current state was unknown. Sarah dialed the hospital's main number from the parking lot. I'm trying to locate a patient in a clinical trial for metastatic breast cancer, she said when transferred. Elizabeth Collins. I'm sorry, we can't give out patient information, the operator said. Privacy policy. She's my birth mother, Sarah said. I only just found her name. I may not have long to reach her. I understand, the woman said kindly. But I still can't confirm if she's here. Can you at least tell me if Dr. Simmons works there? Sarah asked. Yes, he runs several breast cancer trials, the operator said. A small win. At least the trail still led to Brighton. Back home she spread a calendar across her bed. 8 months pregnant. Blood pressure on a knife's edge. 2 weeks until test results. Travel restrictions. And somewhere in Cleveland, a very sick woman whose letters ended with the hope, maybe someday she'll find it. Find me. The baby stirred, restless. I know, Sarah whispered. We have to hurry. The chemistry department at the university smelled faintly of chalk and solvents. Sarah checked the number etched on the frosted pane. Room 317. She'd convinced Dr. Wilson to let her make the short drive, promising to monitor her blood pressure carefully and rest afterwards. She climbed the stairs slowly, hand braced against the wall, feeling the tightness of her belly. When she knocked, a deep voice called, "Come in." The office was cluttered but ordered. Bookshelves bursting with journals, framed diplomas, conference posters. Behind a desk piled high with papers, an older man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes looked up. "Professor Mitchell?" Sarah asked.
I'm Sarah Matthews.
I called yesterday. About Elizabeth Collins. His features shifted at the name, something like old pain flickering through. Yes, he said, gesturing to the chair. Sit, please. You said you had something of hers. Sarah set the bundle of letters on his desk. These were addressed to her, she said. They're from you. His hands trembled slightly as he slid off the ribbon and lifted the top envelope. I haven't seen these in nearly 50 years, he murmured. I didn't know she kept them. She rented a storage unit and maintained it for decades, Sarah said. These were packed away. And now you're trying to find her, he said quietly. Yes, Sarah said. But that's not the only reason I'm here. She inhaled deeply. Professor Mitchell, Elizabeth Collins is my birth mother. He stared at her, expression unreadable. Then he shook his head once. That's not possible, he said. Elizabeth and I lost touch in college. She never had children. She had two, Sarah said gently. A baby girl in 1973 that your letters suggest was yours. And me in 1980. Both adopted. He took off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. 1973, he repeated. That was right after her father sent her away, Sarah finished. For being pregnant. Color drained from his face. My child, he whispered. She was pregnant when she disappeared? You didn't know, Sarah realized. I came back from spring break and she was gone, he said. Withdrawn from school. No note. No address. Her roommate claimed ignorance. I looked for her. Then I had to accept she'd chosen to vanish. She didn't choose, Sarah said softly. She wasn't allowed to contact you. His gaze fell to the letters spread on the desk. 50 years of what-ifs lined his face. I never stopped wondering, he said. I searched for her name now and then. Found almost nothing. Sarah pulled photos from her bag. Elizabeth in nursing uniform at parties at home. She became a nurse, Sarah said. Specialized in neonatal care. Never married. He looked at each picture as if memorizing them. She looks content, he said. I'm grateful for that. He set the photo down and looked back at Sarah. But I still don't understand what you hope from me. I'm trying to find her before my baby is born, Sarah said, resting a hand on her abdomen. She's been in a trial at Brighton. The trail goes cold a few months ago. I thought you might know something or someone who could help. Cancer? He asked, concern instant and genuine. She has cancer? Metastatic breast cancer, Sarah said. Experimental treatment. David Mitchell was quiet for a long time. Then he opened a drawer and took out a small wooden box, similar in size to Elizabeth's. He pulled out a photograph, a young Elizabeth laughing on a campus bench. I've kept this all my life, he said. Regret is heavy, Miss Matthews. Heavier when you did nothing at the time. He studied her, the slope of her nose, the way she held herself. You said she had a baby girl in 1973, he said. And that the father was me? According to her friend Ruth, Sarah said. She was with you then. He closed his eyes briefly. I have a daughter somewhere, he whispered. And now a grandchild on the way. His gaze dropped to Sarah's belly, his expression stunned and tender all at once. Would you be willing to take a DNA test? Sarah asked gently. It could confirm the connection. It might also help me prove to others who I am, if we need access to information. Of course, he said immediately. Anything that might help. And if it does confirm, he hesitated. If you're open to it, I would like to be in your life. Not as a replacement for anyone, but as what I am. My grandfather, Sarah finished. Yes, he said simply. I'd like that, she said, surprised at how right it felt. I think Elizabeth would want that too. For us to find each other, even if we can't find her right away. We will find her, David said quietly, with an intensity that made her believe him. I lost her once without a fight. I won't repeat that. The DNA results came via email while Sarah was halfway through another box from the unit, this one holding Elizabeth's professional history, nursing certifications, commendations, glowing performance reviews. Her phone chimed. She wiped dust from her hands and opened the message. The conclusion was clear. A 99.9% probability that David Mitchell was related as a grandparent. She called him immediately. The results are in, she said. You're my grandfather. His voice when it came was thick. I suspect it from the moment I met you. You have so many of her little habits. The way you tilt your head, how you fold your hands. She realized with a start that her fingers were indeed laced in exactly that way. I've been thinking about our next step, David said. A colleague in oncology research owes me a favor. He's made some quiet inquiries at Brighton. He can't access patient charts, of course, but he confirmed that the metastatic trial is ongoing. Outpatient. So she could still be there, Sarah said. Receiving treatment and living nearby. David agreed. I can take a few days leave and go to Cleveland, do the legwork. Once I find her, perhaps your doctor would approve a carefully planned visit for you. It was sensible. Sarah's disappointment still pricked. She was so close. Let me talk to Dr. Wilson, she said. In the meantime, I'm still going through her things. There might be more. After they hung up, she turned back to the box. Beneath the certificates lay a smaller photo album. This one held hospital snapshots. Premature babies hooked to delicate wires, parents' faces hopeful and afraid. On the back of each, Elizabeth's neat notes. Henry went home today.
Petlebese, dve oziroma.
Clara's first day off oxygen. At the bottom of the box lay a legal document. A deed of trust. Sarah scanned it, making out enough to see that Elizabeth had set aside money for an unnamed beneficiary. The beneficiary line was blank with a notation, to be determined. She set it aside to show David later. As she started to close the box, the interior depth caught her eye. It seemed shallower than it should be. She pressed along the bottom, and just like the wooden keepsake box, a panel shifted aside, revealing a hidden space. Inside was a sealed, cream-colored envelope addressed in precise script, to my daughter. Her hands trembled as she slid a letter opener under the flap. My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, then against all odds my things have found their way into your hands. I've imagined this moment for years, That my carefully hoarded objects might become breadcrumbs leading you back to me. Sarah read every word, tears blurring the page as Elizabeth laid out the truth. How she didn't know her daughter's name or life. How she'd searched through registries and investigators. How cancer had forced her to reconsider time. I am at Brighton Medical Center in Cleveland, participating in a clinical trial she'd written 6 months earlier. I will be here through December, if all goes according to plan. After that I cannot say. She explained that the wooden box held mementos of David, a good man who never knew about the pregnancy. She described the small trust she'd established for the daughter she couldn't locate. And she tried, in careful words, to explain the impossible decision she'd made under pressure. If this letter reaches you, the bottle has found its shore, she finished. If fate is kind, perhaps we may still meet. Sarah pressed the letter against her chest and let herself cry. Elizabeth had been alive, hoping, only 6 months ago. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. We're going to her, Sarah whispered. Whatever it takes. The compromise was Dr. Wilson's idea. I can't approve a 5-hour drive to Cleveland for no medical reason, she said at Sarah's next appointment. But I can refer you to a high-risk specialist at University Hospital there. They have an excellent team. She gave Sarah a look that said she understood more than she was saying. As long as you have someone to drive, take frequent breaks, and report to the specialist while you're there, I'll sign off. David offered his car and his time before she'd even finished explaining. We'll go slow, he promised. Stop whenever you need. No rushing. 3 days later, Cleveland's skyline rose ahead as Sarah stared out the passenger window. Her back ached despite the stops. Her ankles strained against the compression stockings Dr. Wilson had insisted on. How are you holding up? David asked. Nervous, she admitted. What if we're too late? Or what if we're not, and she doesn't want us? One step at a time, he said. First we see if she's here. The rest we'll face together. Brighton Medical Center loomed glass and steel, multiple buildings linked by skyways. David parked in the garage and helped Sarah into the lobby. Her specialist appointment wasn't until 3. They had a few hours. At the information desk, an elderly volunteer looked up. How can I help you? She asked. We're trying to locate a patient who may be enrolled in a clinical trial, Sarah said, rehearse words ready. Elizabeth Collins. She's my birth mother. I learned her name only recently. The woman's face warmed with sympathy, but she shook her head. I'm sorry, dear. I can't confirm if someone is a patient here. Privacy rules. We understand, David said smoothly. Could you point us toward the clinical trials office? We'd like to speak to someone about the metastatic breast cancer study. The volunteer printed a campus map and circled a building. They crossed a glass skyway. Halfway across, a squeezing pain wrapped Sarah's abdomen. She stopped, bracing one hand on her belly. Braxton Hicks, she said at David's alarmed look. Practice. The real ones are worse, apparently. The clinical trials office receptionist listened politely, as David explained they wanted to speak to someone overseeing Dr. Simmons's study. Dear. Simmons is with patients all afternoon, she said. But his research assistant might help. One moment. A young woman in a lab coat soon appeared. I'm Emma Lawson, she said. Dear. Simmons's assistant. Sarah went straight to the point. I'm looking for my birth mother, she said. Elizabeth Collins. She's in your metastatic breast cancer trial. This is my grandfather, David Mitchell. She nodded at Emma's badge. Your ID, Sarah added quietly. The little pink ribbon behind it, that's a trial badge. I've seen the same one in my mother's journal. Emma glanced down, then up again, more carefully this time. I really can't discuss specific patients, she began. We're not asking for treatment details, David said. Only whether she's here. Whether she's alive. He looked at Sarah's rounded belly. She's 8 months pregnant, he said. Time is important to all of us. Emma hesitated. Wait here, she said finally. 10 anxious minutes later she returned. Dr. Simmons can spare a few minutes, she said. Come with me. They were led to a small consultation room where a distinguished man in his 60s waited, charts in hand. Miss Matthews. Mr. Mitchell. I'm Dr. Simmons. Thank you for seeing us, Sarah said. First, I need to verify a few things, he said. Miss Matthews' identification? And anything connecting you to MS. Collins. She handed over her license and Elizabeth's letter from the false bottom compartment. Dr. Simmons read the letter slowly, his face softening. Elizabeth has spoken of you often, he said quietly. The daughter she hoped would find her. Present tense. Relief surged through Sarah so fast she had to grip the arm of the chair. She has been a remarkable patient, he continued. Resilient. Stubborn in the best sense. And very hopeful. So she's still alive? Sarah asked. She is, Dr. Simmons said. The experimental protocol has stabilized her disease. However, she remains seriously ill. She's in our long-term care facility, attached to this hospital. Can we see her? David asked, voice thick. Perhaps, Dr. Simmons said. But I must warn you, her condition includes episodes of confusion. She has good days and bad. And Miss Matthews, he nodded toward Sarah's belly. You are very visibly pregnant. That could be a lot for her to process suddenly. Will you at least tell her we're here? Sarah asked. Let her decide. Yes, he said. I'll be on that unit this afternoon. Call my direct line at 4. I'll have her answer then. When they stepped back into the hallway, Sarah's feelings tangled relief, fear, anticipation. The baby rolled restlessly. 2 more hours, David said gently, checking his watch. We'll go to your appointment, then find something light to eat. We've come so far. She's here. She knows. Sarah placed a hand over her belly. After all this time, she said. She's just 1 floor away. At 4 o'clock exactly, in a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria, Sarah dialed Dr. Simmons's number. David sat beside her, his coffee untouched. MS. Matthews, he answered promptly. I've spoken with Elizabeth. Sarah held her breath. She would like to see you, he said. Both of you. She was overwhelmed, but in a good way. Tears burned Sarah's eyes. When? She asked. Now is as good a time as any, he said. 5th floor, Lakeside Building, room 517. The nurses are expecting you. David drove to the connecting entrance, and a cheerful volunteer insisted Sarah use a wheelchair. Hospital policy for anyone past 36 weeks, she said, pushing them toward the elevators. Even if you feel fine. The long-term care floor was hushed, softly lit. A nurse waited at the station. Elizabeth is having a good day, she said. Please keep the visit short at first. She tires easily. In room 517, a curtain divided a small sitting area from the bed. The nurse slipped behind it. Elizabeth, your visitors are here, she said gently. A faint reply came. The nurse reappeared and nodded. She's ready. Just remember she's changed a great deal from any older photographs. Sarah's heart banged against her ribs as she guided the wheelchair forward. David walked just behind her. They rounded the curtain. Elizabeth Collins sat propped against pillows, a knitted shawl around her shoulders despite the summer warmth. Her hair, what remained of it, was completely white. Cheeks hollowed, skin papery. But her eyes, deep blue, clear and bright, were the same as in every photograph. The same as Sarah's. Those eyes went wide as she took in the wheelchair, the swell of Sarah's abdomen. You're pregnant, she whispered. The first word she'd ever spoken to her daughter. Sarah rolled closer. Yes. A girl. For weeks to go, give or take. May I? Elizabeth asked, voice shaky, hand lifting slightly. Sarah took her hand, fragile, cool, and guided it to the place where the baby liked to push. As if cued, a solid kick pressed up under Elizabeth's palm. Elizabeth gasped, wonder lighting her face. She's strong, Sarah said softly. Like her grandmother. Tears gathered in Elizabeth's eyes. How did you find me? She asked. After all this time? I bought your storage unit at auction, Sarah said. Your things led me. The quilts, the letters, the box, Ruth Mercy Hospital, Dr. Simmons. Each thing pointed to the next. The storage unit, Elizabeth repeated slowly. I meant to keep it paid. When I got so sick I forgot. Her gaze shifted toward the doorway. Her breath caught. David, she whispered. David Mitchell. He stepped forward, emotion laid bare in his face. "Hello, Lizzie," he said. She looked between them, confusion and dawning understanding warring. "I don't understand," she said. "How are you both here together?" "Through you," David said gently. "Sarah found your letters, your photos. When she realized you might be her mother, she came looking for me too." "You never knew," Elizabeth said, half question, half statement. "About the first baby?" "No," David said. "Not until now. Until her. I came back from spring break and you were gone. No explanation." "I wanted to tell you," Elizabeth said, pain in her eyes. "Father wouldn't allow it." "Catherine told me," Sarah said. "About how he sent you away. About how he threatened to cut off her tuition if you kept me." "You spoke to Catherine?" Elizabeth asked, stunned. "After all this time?" "She asked me to tell you she's sorry," Sarah said. "For not understanding. For what you gave up for her." Elizabeth closed her eyes, absorbing that. "She was so young," she murmured. "I couldn't let him punish her for my choices." She opened her eyes again, locking onto Sarah's. "I need you to understand," she said. "I did not want to give you up. Either of you. With your sister I was so young and frightened. With you I thought I was strong enough. But when he threatened Catherine's future..." She trailed off, guilt written across her face. "I do understand," Sarah said. She squeezed Elizabeth's hand, feeling only compassion. "I had wonderful adoptive parents. They loved me. And now? I have you. Both of you. Did you read my letter?" Elizabeth asked. "The one in the false bottom?" "I did," Sarah said. "It told me you were still at Brighton 6 months ago. It gave me hope." "In time," Elizabeth murmured, looking again at the round curve of Sarah's belly. "In time to meet my granddaughter." David cleared his throat. "We've been talking about names," he said. "If it's all right with you, we'd like to use Elizabeth somewhere." Fresh tears slipped down Elizabeth's cheeks. "After everything I did wrong," she whispered. "You do that." "It's because of everything you did," Sarah replied. "Even the hard things. They brought me where I am." The baby kicked again under Elizabeth's hand, a flurry of movement. "She knows," Elizabeth whispered. "She knows she's among family." For a moment all 4 generations existed together in that small space. Elizabeth, Sarah, the unborn baby, and David, whose genes threaded through them all. "Tell me," Elizabeth said, voice steadier now. "Everything. Your life. The auction. How you followed the trail." So Sarah began. David pulled chairs close, and the 3 of them sat as the stories began to weave together, filling in the blank decades. The week following that first visit blurred into a new routine. Sarah's specialist cleared her to stay in Cleveland temporarily, as long as her blood pressure remained stable and she mostly rested. "I'll coordinate with Dr. Wilson in Springfield," the doctor said via video call. "It's not standard, but under the circumstances." David had already begun arranging a short-term rental near Brighton. "My sabbatical starts next week," he said. "We'll be close." 7 days after their reunion, Sarah sat beside Elizabeth's bed again, sorting through photos spread across the blanket. Elizabeth's color had improved, her voice stronger. Dr. Simmons was cautious but pleased. "The treatment seems to be holding things steady," he'd said. "These good days may continue. Or they may not. Either way, enjoy them." "This was my first apartment after nursing school," Elizabeth said now, pointing to a snapshot of a young woman standing in front of a nondescript brick building. "1 room and a bathroom. I thought I was queen of the world." "I had one just like it after college," Sarah said. "The shower was so small I had to leave the door open to wash my hair." Elizabeth laughed, the sound surprising them both. Each day she seemed more alive, as if Sarah's presence, and the tiny life inside her, had added fuel to her fight. She sat in a chair now instead of lying in bed, a bright scarf tied over her thin hair. Her fingers moved steadily over soft yarn as she knitted a baby blanket. "Blue and yellow," she said, holding it up. "Girls don't need pink forced on them from day one." David arrived with lunch. Homemade soup, crusty bread from the cafe near his rented place. "I've been thinking," he said once they'd settled. "Practical matters. Sarah's lease ends next month. That apartment is hardly baby ready." Sarah nodded. Even before Elizabeth, she'd known she couldn't stay there long term. I have an idea, David continued. My house in Columbus has a guest cottage out back. Small but snug. 1 bedroom, little living room and kitchen. It's empty. You and the baby could live there to start. That's, Sarah began, humbled. And if, he said, turning to Elizabeth, when you're ready to leave here, you could take my spare room in the main house. It's all on 1 floor. Easier after treatment. Elizabeth's hand stilled on the knitting needles. You're proposing we all live together, she said slowly. After 50 years apart. Near each other, David corrected, smiling. Connected but with your own spaces. A little family compound. The word settled between them. Family. Fragile, new, right? It sounds wonderful, Sarah said. But there's my job. My bills. There are bookkeeping jobs in Columbus, Elizabeth said. And the trust one set up for you. It's not a fortune, but it will give you breathing room. Sarah's eyes widened. You're serious? We've been talking, Elizabeth admitted. While you're with the doctors. I want whatever time I have left to matter. To be near you. Near her. Not to erase the lost years, David added. We can't. But to fill the ones ahead with something better. The baby shifted and kicked as if weighing in. My lease really does end next month, Sarah said, thinking aloud. Starting fresh with help. That might be what we need. David's smile this time held simple joy. Then we'll make it happen, he said. Over the next few days they began sorting Elizabeth's things more deliberately, choosing what would come to Columbus. When Sarah showed her a photo of the rocking chair, Elizabeth's eyes filled. My grandmother's, she said. I always pictured rocking my babies in it. I'm so sorry I sold it, Sarah said. If I'd known. If you'd known you wouldn't have had the rent, Elizabeth said firmly. You did what you had to do. Don't apologize. 2 days later, Mr. Harmon appeared at the hospital with an unexpected delivery. The rocking chair, newly restored, its wood gleaming. The buyer was quite understanding when I explained, he said, clearly pleased. I may have paid a bit more to reacquire it than I sold it for, but some things belong where they started. They placed it beside Elizabeth's bed. Her fingers traced the carved arms, eyes shining. Now we're ready, she whispered. For her. The first contraction came at 3:17 a.m. A slow tightening that wrapped Sarah's lower back and belly. She breathed through it, counting, just under 40 seconds, and hoped it was another false alarm. The second contraction arrived 14 minutes later, stronger. Deep down she knew. This was it. 3 weeks early. She dialed David. He answered on the first ring. The baby's coming, she said. They had rehearsed. He arrived in minutes, helped her to the car, and called as he drove her. Wilson in Springfield. Then Elizabeth's nurse at Brighton. Her oncologist already signed clearance for short outings. He told the admitting nurse in the maternity ward. She's the birth mother. We'd like her present if possible. We'll need confirmation from her physician, the nurse said. Dr. Simmons already approved, Sarah managed between contractions. Please call him. By dawn, labor had accelerated. She was already fully dilated. The nurses surprised by the speed for a first-time mother. Under Dr. Simmons's supervision, Elizabeth was wheeled in, her fore temporarily disconnected. Positioned near Sarah's head. She dabbed her forehead with a cool cloth through each wave of pain. You're doing beautifully, Elizabeth murmured. Strong and brave. David paced the waiting area outside, hand pressed to the glass, helpless and hopeful. All the things he hadn't been allowed to be in 1973. At 7:42 a.m., after one last exhausting push, the room filled with the indignant cry of new life. The obstetrician laid a small pink, wriggling bundle on Sarah's chest. Hello, little one, Sarah whispered, sobbing with relief. We've been waiting. Elizabeth reached out with a trembling hand to touch the baby's dark hair. She's perfect, she breathed. A nurse approached with a clipboard. Have you decided on a name? She asked. Yes, Sarah said. Margaret Elizabeth. Margaret for the grandmother who wrote all those letters. Elizabeth for? She looked up, tears in her eyes. The bravest woman I know. Later, in a quiet recovery room, David finally held his great-granddaughter. He cradled her as if she were made of light. "She has your chin," he told Elizabeth, studying the tiny features. "We'll see about the eyes. And the Matthews nose," Sarah added with a sleepy smile. "That one's all my dad." A nurse stepped in with a small camera. "Family photo?" she asked. They arranged themselves. Sarah in bed with Margaret in her arms, Elizabeth on one side, David on the other. For generations, 3 reunited lines, one brand new beginning. The flash popped, preserving the moment when the circle finally closed. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new shape. Elizabeth's doctors adjusted her treatment. Her scans weren't miraculous, but something in her had changed. Some will to keep going that fed the medicine and was fed by it. "We can't make promises," Dr. Simmons said. But her response has been remarkable. "We're hopeful." Sarah and Margaret moved into the guest cottage behind David's house, which quickly filled with a crib, a changing table, and the reclaimed rocking chair. The chair found its place in the cottage's small nursery. Each day Elizabeth, now living in David's main house, shuffled across the garden, sometimes with his arm, sometimes with a walker, to sit in that rocker and hold her granddaughter. She hummed lullabies she had never sung to her first 2 children, eyes closed, cheek resting lightly on the baby's soft hair. One warm evening as summer slipped into fall, the 3 adults sat on David's back porch. Margaret drowsed in Elizabeth's arms. Sarah and David sorted the last boxes from the storage unit that Mr. Harmon had kept safe in his warehouse. "I've been thinking about that auction," Sarah said, setting aside a stack of nursing journals. "About how random it seemed. Spending my last $20 on a unit everyone else laughed at." "Any second thoughts?" Elizabeth asked. "None," Sarah said. "I was just thinking about purpose. How something so desperate led to all of this." She waved a hand. The porch, the garden, the house where they all now lived within shouting distance. "One impulsive bid," she said. "And everything changed." "Perhaps not so impulsive," David suggested. "Of everyone there, you were the one who looked past the mess. You saw potential where others saw trash." "I was just hoping for something to sell," Sarah said. "At first," Elizabeth said. "But you could have stopped after the rocking chair. You kept going. Kept following the story." Sarah watched Margaret's small fist curl around Elizabeth's knuckle. "From desperation to this," she said softly. "From alone to family." She thought of the rows of other storage units she'd passed that day. All those padlocked doors. All the stories hidden in dust. "What about the others?" she asked aloud. "All the forgotten boxes? The families who never went back?" "The storage unit whisperer," David said, eyes crinkling. "You could make a business card." Sarah laughed. "Maybe not that exactly. But helping people find what matters in those spaces? Connecting lost things with the people they belong to? It feels right." Elizabeth looked down at her granddaughter, who blinked awake, blue eyes startlingly clear. "Whatever you do," Elizabeth said, "we'll face it together. No more lost years. No more separation," Sarah agreed, laying her hand over Elizabeth's where it rested on Margaret's blanket. 4 hands, 3 generations, one fragile, powerful promise, linking all the broken pieces into something whole.